Everybody duck, duck. Here comes the tomahawk.
A living, breathing monstrosity are a few of the first words spoken in Todd Browning's 1932 masterpiece, Freaks, a film that would change the rules of filmmaking forever. It not only would change the way we told our stories, but it would forever change the way we looked at people on the big screen. This film is for the little people. Hans and Frida are two literally little lovers that travel with a circus that has the strangest cast of characters one could possibly imagine. Their love for one another would normally go untested in such surroundings, but the true evil of man somehow finds itself into this traveling show of freaks. Two normal-looking performers, Cleo, a trapeze artist, and her strongman dummy for a lover, Hercules, concoct the scheme for Cleo to have Hans fall in love with the physically beautiful trapeze artist and slowly take away the little man's fortune from him. A sad scam that does not go missed by Frida and her fellow sideshow gang of unfortunate souls. It does not take long for them to see what these two are up to, and they plot a revenge that Browning actually sets up at the beginning of the film with an attraction that has a backstory that you will not believe. Oh, the poor feathered hen. This is a bold film that really divides a wall between the little people and the big people, the pretty and the ugly, the rich and the poor. The monsters are not the freaks we see on screen, but they are the so-called normal-looking people. Browning does this with such beauty and raw emotion from his cast of non-actors, it will leave you sitting ashamed of every unnecessary wrong you may have done to someone. I cannot get over the fact that Browning makes us fully understand that the power of love and how the misuse of it can be the world's greatest evil. It can be true horror. The best thing to me about this film technically is its acting. I am blown away by the performance of Olga Baklanova, who played one half of the antagonists in this film. She channeled pure evil that very few female actors have accomplished. I seriously would put this performance up against Angela Lansbury in The Manchurian Candidate or Kathy Bates in Misery any day of the week. This film would not work if he did not get the first-rate performance from this actress. Man, do you wind up hating this chick. The mayhem at the end is shocking, but to really sit and watch this brilliant piece of work as a whole is the true treasure. It is 62 minutes of near-brilliant filmmaking that even the non-film fanatic would enjoy. And as far as our theme of exploitation is concerned, Browning, to me, does not exploit these people. He exploits, however, our false sense of what we think beauty really is. 1932, guys, Todd Browning, Freaks. Boy, what a piece of work this is, man.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful film, man, and pretty horrific in certain ways as well. I'm sure it obviously shocked the hell out of the audiences who saw it originally. I mean, it basically destroyed the dude's career, no, and it was spurred all sorts of censorship and protests and all sorts of things when it came out. I mean, it was it did more. It made more of an impact on the film world than any film that came out last year, for instance.
It's pretty amazing. Wasn't his previous film Dracula? With
Yeah, it was.
Bela Lugosi. I mean, it's amazing that the guy did back to back. The vampire movie that created the image that we still linger with today, and then Freaks, like, all in a row. I mean, it's kind of a bummer that the guy's career was destroyed by the film, because he was clearly onto something,
Yeah, I mean, they toyed with it, too. I mean, there was a lot of stuff in there that they took out. They reshot the ending, which looks like shit, by the way. When you watch the movie, it's just it just feels like it doesn't even belong in the film. I know that the Hercules character was supposed to be castrated.
Which, man, that's a true tragedy, man. I mean, the film was originally 94 minutes long or something.
It had
like
basically
that.
a half hour cut out of it.
a half hour, and it's not like a half hour cutout that's going to come out next year on a DVD,
No.
director's cut on a DVD. It's gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's gone, forever gone. You know. I mean, you can only guess what was happening there.
I mean,
Yeah.
what is it? What is it that bothered the people? I mean, just because of the way these people looked. I mean, if that's the case, then we should just be more. We should really be ashamed of ourselves for, for not really understanding what this guy was saying. I mean, it's to me very apparent. What he was doing. I mean, it just blows me away that people would want to take this vision away from people, man.
Yeah. Last week we talked a bit about the looking at old movies, black and white ones, the pre-1960s ones and everything. And, I had said that I grew up watching those. So for me, it's very normal to watch an old black and white movie from the 30s or 40s. But even, the first time I saw Freaks was probably, 8 or 9 years ago. And it was astonishing to me, like that this movie in this form, this black and white film, and the way that films were lit and photographed and edited at that point, and these amazing characters, these faces and these bodies were in front of these cameras, and that I was watching this. It was shocking to me, and I can't even imagine what that was like to someone sitting in a theater in 1932.
It's truly disturbing.
Yeah.
And people don't want to.
They don't want to look at reality in that
Yes.
way. They're
There's
accustomed to the fictionalized version of reality that you get when you sit your ass in a movie theater.
Yeah, well, there's certain segments of the population who don't want to do that, and they're usually the most vocal. And it's usually not. It's not the people who love horror films, and certainly it's not the people who listen to the show. Obviously, but there's still people out there who are disturbed by things, and they want censorship at all costs. And that's what's going on
Probably
here.
censoring the world around them in their own minds on a daily basis, and won't tolerate that bubble be punctured by something like Freaks.
All right, because in their minds, it's not. If they don't see it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they exploit midgets and the Wizard of Oz, and that seems all perfecly okay to people.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
it's all cheery and colorful and has musical numbers.
Right. But this is, everyone stayed away from this. I mean, it did terrible at the box office, and like you said, I mean, it seemed to really take any momentum that this guy was having at the time, because he had just come off that great success of Dracula. I mean, that was a movie that boomed.
Does anyone feel that what happened to him was similar to what happened to Michael Powell with Peeping Tom?
I don't know too much about Peeping Tom, and that's something I do want to investigate.
I know the film, but I don't know what happened to him after he did that.
Well, Michael Powell was a very famous British filmmaker and did such things as The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp and Black Narcissus, which is one of the great Gothic, great Gothic sort of romance, almost horror films. It's kind of a Jane Eyre sort of situation. But he had a very hugely successful career, and then made Peeping Tom, which was about a serial killer who mounted a blade on the end of his camera and photographed his victims as he killed them. And this was 1960, 1961, thereabouts, and derailed the man's career. Never made another film after that. He was so reviled. It didn't matter that he had 30 years of superlative filmmaking behind him, and no one would tolerate Peeping Tom.
Yeah, I mean, that's the studio system, man. When you're on that blacklist, that's it. You're done. You can't. There's no coming back from that, and it's a terrible system, and that it's self-censorship, and I mean it's the same thing that happened with Orson Welles and Citizen Kane.
Yeah. Did anyone feel that the plot of Freaks was a little bit sort of paint by numbers melodrama?
Yeah, and that falls in lines with exploitation, and if we are gonna settle this into the history of exploitation, I mean,
it's kind of revenge fantasy. It's a big element of exploitation.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Tom, I mean, I know what you're saying is that it's trying to speak up for the fair treatment, and they call that the square up on the beginning in the beginning of those early exploitation films where, it professes to be educational,
Uh-huh.
but as educational as all these films were, and that it's the same thing with Reefer Madness, and it started actually right from the beginning or very early with the silent films with the sex hygiene films, I guess, where it's meant to be educational, but really what it's doing is titillating. And so the exploitation is the term actually derives more from the advertising and the quote unquote ballyhoo of these guys who would take these films around and show them basically like a carnival sideshow, exposition or something, So as much as Freaks professes to be, educating everybody on, the merits of treating, the less fortunate better, it's actually really taking, using the spectacle of cinema to draw in an audience,
Right.
and that's basically what exploitation, that's the beginnings of the
There's
exploitation,
those classic books that were written about major metropolises like London and New York. There were these books published ostensibly by morality groups to hand out to visitors to say New York City, explaining where the prostitution occurred and where you could buy drugs and all these things, so that you were quote unquote warned to stay away from them. But everyone basically knew they were guidebooks for people who were looking for prostitutes and drugs in the city.
Yeah, yeah, and even if it wasn't explicitly a guidebook so much, it's gratifying, voyeuristic urges. Again, Peeping Tom, what you just mentioned. It's basically using, and we talked about this. It's funny, man, because it brought it back Peter Jackson from our first one, and Sam Raimi, that they're just so in love with the spectacle of cinema that their plots and their in their
Almost
early films and
an
their
afterthought.
it's inconsequential,
Uh-huh.
and here they kind of they grafted a story which they actually did a pretty fair job as far as 1932 goes in Freaks, but really the draw is what you're gonna go see, and like I said, like these burlesque films, and like they used to have the sex VD films or whatever, like it's like, yeah, these people are from the bad side of town,
Right.
they carry sexual diseases, it's exploitation, but you know what, you're gonna see some chicks boobs or whatever, and they're gonna be talking about screwing around, and that you couldn't get that through Hollywood. So that's basically that's where the birth of exploitation is coming from,
So he's using the physical dysfunction that you see from the cast to make a movie about behavioral dysfunction. So he
Right.
exploits that the physicality in these actors.
Yeah, I mean it's the great paradox of these exploitation films, Oh, be careful, we're going to warn you on how to be safe, or we're going to show you that you need that, these people are human too. But really these people, it's a way of putting an audience in a high-minded position so they feel comfortable enough to gawk at the geek show. You know what I
I
mean?
guarantee you
So
the barkers of the carnivals in
exactly.
Lansing, Michigan, were doing the same thing. And in London, it's the Elephant Man.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Max,
and
yeah.
in the sucker belt they called it. They took these
Yep.
films, basically the sideshows.
Max, I know you're a big fan of this film. Why don't you chime in?
Can I offer a specific question, Max? How much do you love Schlitzie?
Oh, I love Schlitzie, and Billy, you just blew my mind because you mentioned both Lansing, Michigan, and the Elephant Man in one sentence. I was born in Lansing, Michigan, Vicodin, and
And he is the Elephant Man.
and I played the Elephant Man a couple times in the theatrical, in the play Bernard Pomerantz's
Did you
play.
really?
Yeah, I
Wow.
twisted my
That's
body
cool, man.
for that role. And it's so funny. On the last show, I said that old movies make me want to scrub my face off with an SOS pad. Um, with all due respect to you Val Luton junkies, I just think that this film, it's like, and again, this could be the Vicodin, but like I'm just emotional about it. I just think it's so beautiful, and the fact of the matter is, Todd Browning, David J. Skull wrote this beautiful book called Dark Carnival: The Secret World of Todd Browning, Hollywood's Master of the Macabre. And this guy loved these freaks. And I'm assuming that Tomahawk saw the DVD, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I did.
So you understand that you got to see that documentary, which I hope you watched, called Freaks Sideshow of the Cinema.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, Freaks Sideshow Cinema, which gives you the history of each and every one of these extraordinary characters, how they were found, how they were utilized, what their temperament was on the set. And, outside of the fact that I've had a lifelong obsession with sideshow people and disfigurement and all this stuff, I would walk around with a book in elementary school called Anomalies and Curiosities of Medicine. And I was the weirdest fucking kid because I wanted to know how these people live their lives in this abominable state, which people said were abominable, but you have to see in the documentary about the real freaks that these were some of the most well-adjusted people.
Yeah. Max, it's interesting you say that, man, because F. Scott Fitzgerald was working on a film on the same lot as the film Freaks, and he chose to dine with the cast of Freaks, and fell in love with all of them, and appreciated them much more than he did the snobs that he was surrounded by.
Yeah.
And there's real beauty in that, man.
Wasn't Todd Browning himself a circus performer? He worked in the circus before working in film, didn't he?
Yeah, he grew up. He fell in love with a girl from the circus and ended up traveling around with them when he was
personal.
a kid.
I think this film is so personal, and I
totally agree.
Max, I felt that too, man. I really love this film. Is so emotional, and I get it, and I'm with you, and I'm totally,
There's something about looking at somebody who's physically maimed that, I mean, it just wakes inside of you like a feeling of like pure compassion and guilt at the same time for
guilt because you're lucky not to,
right.
You didn't have a choice,
But they're naturally maimed.
Yeah.
It was put upon them, and
yeah, I mean, it's just it's just it just reminds you of how lucky you are, and how ungrateful you are when you walk around every day and you don't appreciate that that you can grab a mug from the cabinet.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
There's a story I read. The people in this movie who had the small heads, right, and they were smaller than average human beings and everything. They had what's called
cephalic.
Yeah, they're microcephalics. And
pinheads.
Yeah, and there was one who, I don't know if he was in this film or not, but he was very famous. Zip the Pinhead. Anyone remember? He's kind of like a famous cult.
Pip and Zip were chicks. Schlitzie was a dude named Simon Wester.
Right.
He lived to be 80.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you guys have to get the DVD because
he lived through a revival, because in the 60s, Freaks came, it was banned for decades, and then in the 60s, it kind of hit the college circuit again. It's a counterculture icon.
60s.
And so that guy, what was his name, Max, who died in his 80s?
Oh, Schlitzie was Simon, a.k.a. Simon Wetzer, I believe.
Yeah, and then he had, he loved performing. He loved it. Yeah, he was a genuine performer, loved the stage, and was very depressed and bored when he wasn't performing. And so he had a brief revival shortly before his death in the 60s because of the counterculture movement revival of Freaks. And it's amazing. You really should not have pity on those people.
Right.
He loved performing. And one of my favorite comedians, Doug Stanhope, has said, the political correctness has done a very damaging thing in that people who could earn a living doing something like that, working as a object of exploitation, now are almost forbidden from doing that by people who don't have their best interests in mind, because they're more ashamed of looking than that person is of performing.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing cultural side effect of what's going on.
It's censorship. Again, it's censorship where you're not allowing yourself or other people to be honest about what they are. And,
Right.
Schlitzie loved performing. Give the guy a fucking stage already,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, man.
He just like when you're in watching this movie, it's like all I kept thinking. I kept thinking about like dividing, people being divided and walls being between people, and to me that's what Browning was just like trying to get across to everyone. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, in watching this, I think. I can't help but think that this world just fucking sucks, man. Like we all just suck.
The world sucks.
Are you
and then
trying to go
die.
straight to my soul, Thomas?
I'm
Well,
just saying,
Because you
man.
just ripped open my fucking soul.
I have a question for the New Jersey residents of our podcast. Does anyone who listens to the Howard Stern show know of Beetlejuice?
Beetlejuice,
Yeah.
absolutely. Lester.
Beetlejuice, microcephalic himself, and
Well, Howard's
king of
definitely.
exploitation.
Yeah, he's keeping
But
the
he's
freaks
giving
alive.
beautiful careers. I have Beetlejuice's DVD. I have to have it. I have to see Beetle do his thing.
Yeah.
I have to see it. And it kind of ties into my point in my Blackula Scream review. You guys have to help me out with the term exploitation.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to wrap your head around
Yes.
because it's so big, and I can't say that it's such a vague term
Yeah.
though too. But going to Howard, he's doing exactly what
The carnival workers do.
Freaks is doing, and in that I mean both exploiting that as and gratifying his audience's voyeuristic need to see these deformities, these people who are.
Well, you have to pay to
not
see it, and you have to pay to hear
But
it.
but he also treats them with respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he's
You know,
genuine
He
with
loves
them.
them.
And
Yeah,
doesn't have a
because he
problem
has
being himself. Like he'll insult
part of
them
the
if
family.
yeah.
And he doesn't have a problem being politically incorrect in that, you know what,
Smart.
because you know what it means. It means having the ability to laugh at yourself and saying, I'm a freak. I have my problems. So of course I'm gonna goof on you, whether you're a black, a dog, a midget, whatever you are. I feel okay laughing at you because it's okay for you to laugh at me because I'm okay laughing at myself. You know what I mean? And that's what I think where Freaks is unique in its position or its classification as exploitation is that it does have that that genuine feeling for its subject matter,
It's
where
not
it
afraid to
wasn't
look.
always the case. Yes, and it actually does have an affection for and a respect for its subject matter.
Hey Joe, do
You know what I
you
mean?
think that having that initial thought that we all have that well, when you look at people like this, that you think to yourself, well, I'm so thankful for who I am. Do you think that is like separatist and kind of obnoxious? I mean, that we all have thoughts like that. Like, I think that's part of a problem. I think, and we're all guilty of it. I'm not like excluding myself from it, but
But there's different shades of that, man, because what you can take from that are ultimately a couple of things. Like you can ultimately convince yourself that, oh, I feel so sorry for him, but I feel better about myself that I'm not them.
Mhm.
But you can also it's such a small shade, like a tiny adjustment of looking at that is saying that I'm so grateful for being given this gift that I'm alive and walking around,
right.
I mean, it's a minute difference, but it's a difference all the same, and it's a spiritual difference of how you relate to the people, your life in relation to the people that are around you, because at the same time, if you're looking at other people and separating yourself from them, and positioning yourself within the mix of society, then you're probably the kind of person who's doing that every day, all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Oh boy.
Max, if you think that I have a hangdog, how did you put it? I sound like a mopey dog or something all the time. It's because I walk around with the acute knowledge that I could get hit by a bus at any moment and become a torso and a head without arms or legs. I don't. I
Like
think
the falling safe syndrome, right?
snarkiness is a dangerous trait to have in a human being because at any moment there's a disease. Max, you and I could probably get into a pretty good conversation about phobias about exotic diseases, but there's one that your bones grow uncontrollably and in all directions at the same time, and over the course of years, you just become a living statue of bone. And you calcify, and so you end up with these omnidirectional lattices and spikes of bone, and if it's diagnosed early enough, the doctors tell you have to make a choice whether you want to be a standing or sitting person.
Oh my God, man!
Yeah.
What are you doing to me?
I know, and it's like the shit is out there, like congratulate yourself on having 2 legs and arms and being able to reach to the top, get a cup of coffee, but right around the corner, any day it can happen to you. So don't get cocky.
No.
The hell are we
Thank you for
talking
that
about?
reminder. Thank you.
Should we bring it back to the film a little bit?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna ask everyone because I was so infatuated with Olga Baklanova's performance. I really wanted to bring that up, and I'm gonna hit Max, our actor, first with this. Did you love this performance, Max? Because I found it to be quite extraordinary, man. I mean,
Absolutely. And nothing is more of a testament to her powers than when she was offered the goblet and her reaction. And it's almost amazing because you don't hear the words coming out of her mouth, but you look at her and you see her repulsion and her fear and that drowning sense of this is not what I want to be a part of. And it rips you apart and you hate her so much, but at the same time, it's like you don't really know her fate, and once things go into the woods with the rain and the horses and the carriages, oh man, it just goes to such a place. I can't even handle it sometimes. It's so fucking beautiful.
it's powerful stuff, Billy.
This is the ultimate midnight movie. This is the ultimate film for the malforms and the malcontents and the tossed asides out there who have nothing or don't have a social life or whatever. I mean, this is one that they can really get behind.
Yeah,
It's a granddaddy.
Billy, did you like her performance?
You know what? I did not take too much performance of that actually this time around. I was sort of looking more at it in an overall context. But I mean, I thought everyone in that movie did really great as actors. So.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to have an amazing love affair with these people and this actress, and it really comes across on the screen, and you rarely get that. Like, we were talking about how the acting is just so stale in these films up until Brando comes along, and there was just such a realness to everything in this movie. Todd Browning is a master in my opinion, at least in this film.
Yeah, he does something that I'm not sure that's ever been done previous to it, but something that's been done over and over again afterwards, which is taking an audience behind the scenes of a circus, which is really just an amazing. It's just really fun to do that, and I actually just saw a film that did it. So it was funny watching how they did it in Water for Elephants, which is really model. It's like a really it's a really modeling love story type of film, but it does the same thing. And there's a fascinating it's an American fascination, or it's not even American. I mean, Fellini does it. I mean, it's all over the place. But circuses are great, man. I mean, there's a mystery and there's a fascination with the people who travel from town to town and the freaks and seeing behind the scenes, man. It's pretty groundbreaking stuff.
And Browning does an amazing job at establishing that community. When you're watching that film, particularly in the first half hour, you feel like you're part of that community, man. Yeah. And that's what really draws you in.
I want to hang out with them.
Yeah, this guy's ahead of his time. He could fucking direct this guy. I'm telling you.
He was so great.
I would take exception, Joe, with the one comment you said that it went behind the scenes for the first time. I mean, behind the scenes stuff at carnivals and circuses have been a staple of drama for a really long time. But what he did that was different was that he put the real deal in front of the lens.
Right,
You know,
right,
and
right.
he didn't balk at that. And it's, I mean, that's amazing. Like I don't I don't know what studios were thinking like when he said, "Well, this is the movie I'm going to make and I'm going to put these real people in front of the camera." And then they're like,
They
"Oh,
let him
this is
do it.
great. Absolutely, go for it. Wonderful. We're behind you 100%." And then he goes and does it and shows it to him and they're like, "Jesus Christ, what are you doing?"
What do you? Yeah, they're running out the door.
Like,
Well,
what did they
you know-
expect? Like, what movie were they expecting to watch when he was done?
Well, the seed had been sown with the Unholy Three, which was with Lon Chaney, and according to the lore, Lon Chaney was supposed to. I don't know what. I keep thinking about what part would Lon Chaney play in this film, because someone in one of the docs says, even Lon Chaney couldn't pull off physicality like this. So, and Browning and Lon Chaney had this awesome relationship, much like Ed Wood and Lugosi. I mean, that is a ripe film to be made. The Todd Browning film. We talked about this.
Yeah.
I need to read more on that guy. I really only know Dracula and Freaks.
Great Dark Carnival, dude.
He makes his last movie in 1939. He dies in 1962. I mean, he just stopped making movies, man. I'm so curious to hear how you guys rate these rate this film. So we're gonna move on to that. But real quick, I just wanted to say that Hans and Frida are real life siblings.
Yes.
I didn't.
Oh shit!
Yeah, they're
No.
sister. Yeah,
Good work.
yeah.
Nice.
Which is
Hey, one last
Yeah,
thing,
no,
which was
Double family.
a great little touch, man. And when they go to confront Cleopatra at the end, right before they overthrow the train of cars and everything, the one midget's playing the flute as they close in on each other. That's just, I mean, it's just a stroke of brilliance, man. Did you guys catch that?
No, I missed that one.
I didn't
It's
catch it
great,
either.
man. Like the flute's playing, because there's so much going on, and it's right at the climax, and they're all
got a knife. The midget's playing the flute.
Yes, he's got the knife.
The knife is yeah. They all do it so slowly, right?
Yeah,
It's
and everybody's closing in. It's really Lynchian, man.
Yeah.
And just one of the midgets is just standing on the side. Right, Max? Is it a midget? I think it's one of the small
Midget, there's a dwarf, and then there's Johnny Eck, who is the half man. And
You're talking about in the rain when they're crawling under the cart and the guy got a knife in his teeth and all that.
It's just before that when they're in her trailer or whatever, and they're talking. They were talking to her, right, Max? And the one's just sitting there at the side playing the flute, like.
It's the code of the freaks, baby. I'm gonna have an orgasm.
That's just the Vikings talk.
Let's
wait till we talk about Ichi to do that.
Oh boy! Oh man! A long way to go tonight, guys. Let's get to ratings. I'm going to start with you, Max. 1 out of 5. 1 being poor, 2 being fair, 3 being good, 4 being very good, and 5 being excellent. Max, give me your rating.
Well, not to be predictable, and not to be a whore with my 5s, but this is a 5-star feature. It's one of my all-time faves, and I watch it at least once a year. It kills me.
Nice,
Billy.
I'm gonna go with 4 stars on this one. It's clearly a classic. I have to judge the thing for itself. It would be an amazing experience to see this in the director's original vision of how this film should have been. I think it suffers from having that half hour cut out of it, and I think it suffers from an amazing subject and everything being rammed through a very predictable melodramatic plot. But it's clearly an outstanding classic and worthy of 4.
Yeah, someone needs to get on that. They really need to try to come close to delivering what Browning's full vision was, because it deserves to be out there. And it is brilliant without it, but it needs to happen. Joe, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's a really great film. 4 for me for all the reasons that we were talking about. I just I love it too. I've seen it a bunch of times. So yeah, 4. I guess slinking through the mud is the image that sticks with me most, man. It's just
nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy,
And
man.
and isn't it weird that there's that one pinhead you haven't seen in the rest of the film? She is crawling, and it's like that's not Pip or Zip or Schlitzie or which one's that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about how the little slug man, the little bald black limbless
I know where
man,
it's going.
how he wipes his poopy hole? Did they have? I mean, how does he?
Man, what about the
That
guy who was
cigarette lighting scene is amazing. Where
yeah.
he does it all with his mouth. As you're just watching that, thinking like you don't even care what the conversation is that's going on behind that scene. You're just like, how the fuck is this guy gonna light that cigarette?
See, if our show had a photo gallery, I would draw all the freaks, and we could post them on the gallery, and everyone would just stare at them.
Joe, I think you should do that. I think you should start designing that section of the website.
I'm gonna work on that.
We have a makeshift photo gallery on our Facebook fan page, people. Join the fan page, you fucks. Hey, listen, guys, I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna go with Joe and Billy. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. It just falls a little bit short for the reasons that we discussed. That it was kind of tweaked, and I'm sure that the 5-star rating is out there. If I could ever see the full version, that again, it just someone needs to really put that together.
But the tragedy, they can't put it together. It's just gone. I mean, it's gone.
Well, and here's the thing: is occasionally lost films show up in a vault in Argentina somewhere. Where they sent a full version of the film to a foreign country, and it's sitting in a shelf somewhere. You never know. But officially, yeah, there's no, the studio didn't preserve any of the material that it cut out. So if they ever do find one, it's going to be like the perennial search for the perfect Fritz Lang's Metropolis, or one of those things. So
right. Well, guys, thanks a lot for doing Freaks, man. It was really a great review, and I had so much fun. Up next, we are moving on to 1973, and we are going to introduce Scream, Blackula Scream, and the man to do it is none other than the California Chainsaw Massacre, Mr. Max Cook. My friend, get it going.